This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Good morning, Kelly.
Morning, Ethan.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing all right.
What's new this morning? Anything good? Anything bad?
Like personally or...
It's open-ended. You can address it however you wish.
Both. I mean, I've got two relatively healthy little girls, so that's always positive. Love that. The youngest one, who is 9 months old today, actually, she is like so close to crawling. Like
awesome.
You can tell, like she's like she gets up on her hands and knees and she like kind of like rocks back and forth, and she hasn't quite figured out to like
legs move, arms move,
shimmy the knees a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But man, she still does this like army crawl, and she'll go across an entire room pretty quick. Turn your back for 1 second, she's gone.
Yep.
The other one is, 2 going on about 23.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
Could be a fun time with that one. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna dive into a couple articles here. The first one's I think kind of funny and pretty interesting. So in Chattanooga, Tennessee, maybe we can add this into one of our like scenarios that we always do on our webinars, but apparently there was a crazy amount of like bees that were on a playground. Like the kids couldn't even go on the playground. It was an elementary school. And just so happened, I think it was the assistant principal, happened to have looks to me to be a beekeeping hobby. So this assistant principal is like, hey, I know how to take care of that, and got her whole bee suit on and like all the equipment and all the stuff, and smoked them all out and put them in a bucket and relocated them. Problem solved. I thought it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so this is that time of year, right? So after the winter siesta, bees tend to start dividing their hives and moving and doing that kind of stuff. A queen is produced and a queen flies out, and I'm probably oversimplifying this, and I hope I'm getting it right, but the queen goes out and she looks for a home. So many of the worker bees follow the new queen, and they start swarming and trying to find out what is she doing so that they can follow her. And it happens, apparently in this case, they found a school. It's an awesome spectacle when you are in the middle of that. It's crazy when you see all these bees and people are panicking. It's crazy. But from a school perspective, we have some serious concerns, right? Because of the potential for bee allergies, being stung by bees, and with that kind of activity, you're more likely to encounter a bee sting. From a school safety perspective, I'm sure most schools have EpiPens, or at least the students have, that are allergic to bees and other peanut allergies, those types of things, all have EpiPens.
You could add into that what if of like, we're talking about an elementary school, so there might be a good chance that there might be some kids there that don't know that they're allergic to a bee because they've never been stung by one.
That's correct.
And they get stung and they're like, oh shoot, I can't breathe. So
right.
You can add that to your what if scenarios.
Yeah. Let's play Kelly's game here and make this a real emergency other than just for one kid. What if you have 5 of those kids? So you have a swarm of sometimes a couple hundred, sometimes thousands, depending on the circumstances of bees. And maybe you have 4 or 5 kids that get stung that are allergic. Out of your 200, that's not very many. It's not a high percentage, but when you start dealing with 5 or 6 kids that are showing signs of anaphylactic shock because of their allergies to bees, some may have known it, some may not, it quickly can escalate to a real thing, right? So I'm glad it all turned out in this case, because the assistant principal was a beekeeper, but that's not always going to be the case. And I would say
I was gonna ask, is this
rarely
a
is that.
is this a we got it right, or is this a we got lucky kind of thing?
You tell me.
I think we already know the answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got lucky that one of your on-site people had the
So
skills and the know-how to deal with that.
in this scenario, what would be the difference between being lucky and being right?
Being right may look like maybe this area is prone to bees, so that maybe in your plans you have like a beekeeper or some pest control type company already like looking into that as a preventative.
You look at the potential. What's our threat? Bee allergies, being stung by a bee. What's our threat? When do we know that bees are likely to move like this? Springtime. When are our kids most susceptible? When they're outside, right? And so, do we know what our kids' allergies are, first and foremost? Are we asking those questions? Do we know that there are specific kids that have bee allergies? If we do, and we walk out and we see them swarming, maybe those are the first kids we get inside. They might be our priority because they're a known, your threat has a known potential target. They might be that priority. But then looking at, okay, the chances of us actually having a beekeeper on staff is
Yeah, pretty slim.
pretty slim.
Yeah.
And so, what are your other alternatives? Having EpiPens available, having phone numbers for when we see the bees swarming. Hey, we got some bees swarming and it looks like they're hanging out underneath this eave or in this playground equipment or what have you. Do you have that number available that of a beekeeper who could do that? Or animal control who might have that? Let me ask you this. What's your protective action?
I was just thinking that. It's like you pulled that out of my brain. That's so weird. The heck? Are you a magician?
I am.
I was just about to ask
especially
you, what is
especially
the like the protocol that we would take for this? Something.
especially
Oh man,
pulling it out of
I'm
your
I'm
head.
I'm weirded. I'm weirded out now.
So
I'm thinking of like I feel like I mix these up. I feel like it'd be like a shelter,
okay.
like whatever the action. I always get these mixed up. Whatever the action is that like you can still continue your classrooms as needed, but just don't go beyond. Like it's not a you can't go outside thing.
Yeah.
That's why I think shelter, but then I think shelter goes beyond the classroom activity thing. So maybe it's just a hold.
Okay.
I always get those.
So let's walk through this, right? So there's a couple that you could use that would be appropriate as long as you're training for this, right? So
Yeah.
generally speaking, when we think of evacuation, we think of evacuation as moving from inside a building to outside a building. The reality is you're evacuating a space. You could evacuate a classroom into an auditorium or a cafeteria. All you're doing is moving them from an unsafe place to a safer place. So evacuation could be used there. But in order for you to really understand that, you have to practice that, right? Because, and this is why we can't do like rote every time you do a fire drill. Stand up, walk out, and you go to the basketball court or you go to the play yard or whatever, right? Because your problem may be your evacuation site. So in this case, if you hit evacuation and your threat, the bees, are in your evacuation site, what are you going to do? You're going to cause confusion. So it's appropriate to use an evacuation, but you have to train that. You have to evacuate to a location, right? So understand that it's to a location. That's why it's important for us to practice that. Some people call it a reverse evacuation. It's not, there's no such thing. It's an evacuation from one location. In this case, from you're evacuating the play yard into the building. All right. So if you're not practicing that kind of action, what's the next best? You're going to be a little bit surprised by what I say here. The next best is probably secure.
Okay.
Because the action is everyone inside, lock the doors.
Okay.
That's something that is within the actual protocol. Is everyone inside, lock the doors, activities as normal. In this the standard by which you perform those, that's part of that. So it's not outside of the normal protocol, right? Hold would probably be confusing because the word hold means stay in place.
Okay.
In that shelter, you could do that, right? So shelter would be something to the effect of shelter, be hazard, get inside, get to your classrooms. But again, it's identifying the hazard and the action that you want them to take.
We had a little worksheet that did something like this, didn't we? One of our webinars, we had a like think of the thing and then think of what your protocol would be.
Yep.
Kind of line your protocol up with the threat.
Yep.
We made something like that.
Yeah. But it's one of those things. It's a good little scenario because it's not. We always gravitate towards the active violence, active shooter type stuff.
Mm.
But you're much more likely to encounter something like this at your school than
yeah.
And it's pretty common to see that kind of behavior when I say that behavior, that kind of behavior, let's expand it to the wild kingdom, right? Let's even in urban or suburban areas, we see coyotes, we see bear, we see mountain lions, we see snakes, we see dangerous animals. And when we start looking at our protocols, we have to define what aligns with that, right? Like you said, we did do a worksheet on this. We did talk about aligning those protocols and saying, okay, if you have these 5 standard response protocols, what are the activities or the threats that are going to be identified as threats to your students and staff, and where are they going to go under those scenarios? For what circumstances are you going to call a lockdown? Under what circumstances are you going to call a secure, et cetera, all the way down? So that you can start saying and start training, if you get this, then you're going to do this. It's different than saying, we're going to train you in the 5 standard response protocols, and it's kind of like this. You could use it for this, you could use it for that. But if we start thinking about the scenarios that fall under each category first, then we're more likely to follow that up, even if it's an unrecognized or unthought of threat, because it's going to fit your categories pretty quick. So wild animals are part of the secure.
Interesting. Okay.
Because the threat's outside the building.
Right. That's kind of one of your key things is that, like, where is the threat? I think determines.
It's the proximity that you are to the threat.
Good stuff. All right. So let's see. I'll go to this one real quick. So there was a learning management platform that was been hacked. This was articles from yesterday, so it's still, I believe, an ongoing thing. Maybe something that we don't always talk about, something that we don't always think about. So basically, this very well-known learning management platform got hacked. The hackers are demanding a ransom. Of course, that's always seems to be the end goal, and even like the end users who are using the platform, like apparently they're getting like pop-ups on their screen if they try to use it. It's like it's the ransom or whatever. That's pretty wild. What I want to say here is one of the main reasons why this is happening is that like multi-factor authentication stuff. So, whenever you have, any type of technology that you're logging into, yes, multi-factor authentication is sometimes kind of annoying where you have to log in here and then confirm it on a different device that you own. There's a reason for that. So a lot of these schools are having to deal with this, that are using this platform, because it seems that they got in. So
yeah. So here's what I'll say about this. As a school safety professional, you have to deal with threats. And dealing with threats is not the generic or the universal, I'm going to threaten you with bodily harm, right? There are threats to systems.
Yeah, I'm gonna manipulate you into giving me money, or I'm gonna buy. Right. Looks like they hacked into not like government ID stuff, but like student names, class schedules
Schedule.
and weird stuff
Mhm.
like that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're talking about, them having access to your student informations. So
Yeah. So, but
pretty important stuff.
if your school or organization or business relies on a system to operate properly, right? So if they're into the SIS systems, either through the front door or the back door, however you describe that, they have access to things that cost you money.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about budgets and all of this stuff, right? And it impacts whether it impacts the trust that the community and the families put in you to protect their information. It impacts all of that stuff. So it can be devastating to districts when they have a cybersecurity. Even though there's no physical harm per se, I mean, there could be some, but you'd have to abstract that down. It is as important. You are more likely to experience this than an act of violence, and you're going to experience this on a larger scale. Your threat is cybersecurity and somebody hacking into your system or some other system that you employ. What do you do with that? How do you continue your operations while you're battling this, right? And so it is no different, the steps that you need to do and take. It is no different than any other threat, a threat of fire, a threat of violence, a threat of anything. It impacts the security of your school. Just as an example, cybersecurity would be responsible for like video surveillance cameras, right? So if they hack into your video surveillance, they can take down your video surveillance. It's all of these systems that are tied together. And if they have control of that, your security is put in jeopardy. Identify what the potential threats are. Look at your systems. Look at what happens if they get hacked, and what are your steps as soon if they do get hacked. What are your steps to mitigate that? Who do you call? What systems do you shut down to prevent further spread of a virus, or how do you unplug that so that it stops the spread? That's a good those point. Types of things. I'm not a cybersecurity person, but I know enough to say that's a threat, and I should ask the right people. Get with your IT people and say, what happens if this gets so?
All right.
What's it going to cost us?
And it stinks for the schools because it's like I feel like a lot of the time it's not necessarily like an employee of a school's fault that this happens. It's like they just get in through they could get in through a company employee account. So it could have happened from the company side because they didn't have all the the right security stuff, and now they have access to every single school that they have as a customer. So yeah, pretty wild stuff.
So let's look at it from a company perspective, right? Totally made up scenario, but it happens. If you have an employee of your company that's providing the service that is disgruntled, they didn't get the promotion that they wanted. They didn't, there's they're disgruntled about
more intentional, nefarious kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, from inside the company.
Wow.
So if you're a company person, how are you protecting your clients? So we do lots and lots of security stuff at Crisis Go. It's to protect both of us.
Yeah.
Right? It's to protect our business, and it's to protect our clients and our customers. You have to ask yourself, how vulnerable are we as a company? And all of those companies, when you are looking at vendors, you should ask those questions. And we're seeing it more and more as we grow in this field. We're seeing more and more questions like that. So from my perspective, keep them coming.
Yep. Keep us accountable. Let's go to the last one I got for you, and this is a good one. So a man was arrested after shots fired at an SRO on elementary school property. So this guy, I was listening to the video, and this guy apparently follows the SRO onto school campus. The SRO, she kind of quickly realized, at first, apparently she thought maybe it's a parent that maybe didn't know where they're going or something, but then kind of quickly realized that this guy shouldn't be on property, and quickly unfolded to this guy pulling out some type of weapon and started shooting at her. Luckily, no one was injured from what I was seeing, and the SRO, called, radioed in, like, saying, go on lockdown, don't, come out of the building, yada, yada. And then they arrested this guy, and all good, basically.
So she did
No
good,
one, no
right?
one died. No one got, I mean, the bad guy got shot in the chest, whether self-inflicted or from the SRO. They haven't quite determined that yet, but yeah, he was the only one that injured.
Was he injured or was he killed in the
Injured so far, I think.
injured? Okay.
From what I was hearing, he was still at the hospital. So
Not that it matters that much to me,
right,
but
but it says
but
like, hey, wow, that's pretty good. That's and it just kind of in the video was saying like it just goes to show like having that SRO on campus was like great.
yeah, and it certainly emphasizes that having the right person in the right space at the right time is beneficial, right?
Mm.
And I'm going to start by saying this. She did a great job. She did what she was supposed to do, but she almost didn't. Her first thought was what?
That maybe was a parent,
right?
Yeah.
Why?
You're going through your deliberation phase.
It happened every morning. It happens like that. She walks onto campus. There's a teacher following her. There's a parent following her. So that's routine. But something was off to her. She probably can't even explain it, but something was off.
Yeah.
And so
or
she
the
turns
denial. Sorry, that was your denial phase, not your deliberation.
Well, yes and no. And the reason I say yes or no is because nothing's really happened yet. So
sure,
your denial, deliberation, decisive moment is once something happens. It's how you respond in crisis. So what this does do is she didn't wait for crisis. Something happened and she acted upon whatever it was. It was a feeling, an intuition, just something didn't seem right. Something was out of place. I've never seen this guy before, or I don't even know if it was a guy. I think it was. Something was wrong. In that sense, says, wait, this isn't normal. This is outside of the normal behavior. Actions fall into where on what we've been talking about extensively for the last year and a half or so.
Left of bang.
Left of bang. She saw something that was just not right.
Yeah.
Something, like I said, she understands in her mind, and I'm putting thoughts into her head because I haven't talked to her. I don't know. But she likely saw something that was out of the ordinary and it was just off for her, right? Originally she thought it was a parent following her into the school, but then something clicked and said, wait a second, I need to talk to this guy. I need to do something. This isn't right. The behavior's off. So what she did in that split second was she compared the baseline activity, what happens to her every day, and today something was different. Whether it was, I've never seen that guy, the way he's decreasing the distance between.
Yeah, it looked like he was like maybe so it says that she was patrolling the area. So I'm assuming that's like in her vehicle, because then it says
it could be on foot.
It says and the assailant vehicle was following her and then continued on to school property, where the SRO confronted the driver,
right?
Saying like, hey, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah. So there's some activity, right? But she's like, what are you doing? Why are you following me? Why? The behavior is out of the norm.
It almost seems like targeted to me.
It could be, but that's not normal behavior.
No, it's not.
Right. So when you talk about left of bang, it's not identifying, oh, they had to do this, 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 and this. There's a baseline behavior. When everything is normal, people act like this, like X.
Yeah.
And then at some point, the behavior deviates from what's normal. And it's at that point that you recognize, something's not right. I need to take action. And that's where she did everything right. She started taking action, and, unfortunately, shots got fired and somebody got hit. I mean, you'd rather that not happen, but it worked out the way that it was supposed to work out if they're insistent and they're shooting and she's taking the action. But the point is she took action. She started her response to what was happening before a shot was fired. She didn't wait until the shots were fired. She didn't say, oh, that's just some parent, and brush that off. Something was wrong enough that she said, I need to talk to this person. I need to confront this person. I need to engage this person.
That's all it takes sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes when you interrupt their plan, they short circuit.
They're like,
they just they don't plan for the contingencies. They think I'm gonna drive in, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna enter the building, I'm gonna start shooting, I'm gonna do all this stuff, right? Step by step. I've planned it, I've worked it out for so long, this is the way it's gonna happen. And then there's an interruption and they short circuit. They get panicked and confused and so forth. So good job on her part.
That when you say like interrupt and like confuse their plans and they short circuit, it reminds me of the scene in Guardians of the Galaxy where the guy's about to like shoot Quill and all his friends, and
he's dancing
and he starts dancing. It's like, let's have a dance off, and the guy's like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah,
that's what it makes me think of.
But he was distracting as well. But it's the idea of that interruption of thought and process, and that can get people flustered very quickly, especially when they're singularly focused.
All right, that's what I got for you for articles. What would you like to talk about today, Kelly?
There's been some conversations going around, and it's come to the point where I think I need to discuss this just a little bit, is from a couple of different angles this is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
There's been some discussion about whether or not we're actually safer. We've spent lots and lots of money, and we bought all these security things, and security is always changing, and we keep buying these things, but are we actually safer? The answer to that is define safer. What does that mean? How do you measure that, right? And if you measure it by the absence of anything happening, we're probably a little bit safer. That being said, I think you're measuring the wrong thing. Just because...
Right, that's not the only variable in the equation.
Well, and safer is the absence of something going wrong.
Right.
Right. And
it's very hard to measure something that's not there for you to measure.
That's right. And so we talked about this many, many times. Yeah. How do you measure prevention?
Over years and years and years.
Years and years. But still, how do you measure how many times you prevented something, right? So truly measure prevention. So I use this scenario. Let's just say a gang member for sake of this scenario, pulls into a parking lot in front of a liquor store. He's going to rob that liquor store. That gang member has a gun and he's pulling down the mask. And as soon as he starts to reach for the door handle in his car to exit to go into the liquor store, a police vehicle enters the parking lot. The police vehicle stops and goes to the store right next to the liquor store. Gang member sees that, puts all the stuff away, turns around and leaves. Nobody knows that he was there except for him. How do you measure that? Just because that marked patrol vehicle was there in the parking lot at that time. We call that preventative patrol. But we don't know how to measure that because we don't see everything. We're just highly visible. We're out there doing our job. So the same is from the security side in your buildings. And I will say that some of the security measures we have, I think, are misunderstood. We say that they're security, but I don't think they prevent. Security means that you're preventing something from it. You're secure. It's not going to happen. You're preventing it. We've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on putting cameras in our schools. Hundreds of millions. But we know that they don't prevent things. One, they're not monitored. Two, we know that every bank in the United States has multiple cameras, and yet people still rob banks.
I mean, there's got to be some preventative to them because
not for the people who are.
If you're a bad actor or whatever, and you, I mean, some would say, "Oh shoot, there's a camera. I'm not going to do something,"
because you're inclined not to do it anyway, right? So you're
right. You have to be really.
If you're going to rob a bank and you go in and say, "Oh, there's a camera," and you turn around and walk out, you have zero idea of
how banks are.
how banks are.
You probably
You've never
shouldn't be a
been.
bank robber because
That's
every
right.
bank has
It has
cameras.
cameras. That's right. So
Gotcha.
banks get, casinos have cameras over every table and multiple cameras with multiple views, and
You
yet
get those
we still
guys
get.
with the sleight of hand moves
And
and stuff. And okay.
they're cheating, they're doing all kinds of stuff, and so and casinos get robbed, right, as well. And those, and many times in casinos, those are actually monitored. They have hundreds of
Yeah.
cameras and they have people up there monitoring activity throughout the casino, and yet casinos still get robbed, people still cheat on the tables and so forth, and they have facial recognition. People still try to disguise themselves up and go in there, right? So is it a deterrent? Maybe, but it's not really preventative. Unless you have something that says it, like you have AI over the top of it, and there's lots of discussion we can have about that. But at least you're focusing on a particular type of activity. So are we safer because of the security? Yes, to some degree, we are. Are we safer because of all the technology that's out there? Yes, we are. So that's the first question, right? And the first take at this answer. The other part of this is now we're seeing, I'm going to call it the budget crash. I'm not sure that that's the right term for this, but we went through several years where there literally was hundreds of millions of dollars available for school security that people did not take advantage of and or misused. But there was people, don't get me wrong, people took advantage of it as well. They took, good advantage. They got things started.
Yeah.
But there's a misunderstanding with all of these grants. Even as a young deputy, I would say you live by the grant, you die by the grant. And because grants are never meant to be perpetual and never ending. Grants are limited term. Generally speaking, especially federal and state grants, are meant to be seed money to start a program or to start buying security equipment because it's expensive. Everyone knows that. But they're generally 3 years in duration, and they're designed. The intent is to provide that startup money. You figure out how you're going to sustain this in the future, and they give you 3 years to do that and bring it into your budget. So you're really not living by the intent of most grants. If you say at the end of 3 years, we have no more grant money, so we're getting rid of this service or these, or we're not going to buy anymore, we're not going to do anything, because that's not the intent of those grants. So we're past that, and there's more and more impacts or strains on our ability to fund security. So there's a decline in population. I don't know the reasons behind it, but there's an actual decline in population. People are having less children.
Yeah.
So for those districts that make money off of ADA, average daily attendance, if that attendance is down, so is your funding, right? Then we have the political side of things where families are pulling kids out of school, right? And they're either homeschooling them or they have, in some states, they have voucher programs that kids get vouchers to go to a private school or to another school, or I'm not quite sure how all that works. But that money is being taken away from your schools. So how do we still protect those that are there? I've said this, if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Your budget doesn't care if you have an incident. You still have an obligation to make sure that your kids and your staff are protected. Are you going to have to get creative with less budget? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But the reality is that if you have an incident and you have just said, well, I couldn't do it because I didn't have a budget, you'll find the budget when the lawsuits come. Right?
Yeah.
So we have to figure that out. And when you talk to the schools, time and money is their number one excuse why they're not doing something. Let's say reason why they're not doing something, time and money. If you talk to first responders, they have a different take on it. Generally, not everyone's going to agree with me, but generally. And that's, what are you doing if you don't have the money? If you talk just anecdotally to your first responders. And I'm talking SROs, I'm talking school safety people in law enforcement. Some states require that law enforcement be that person. If you talk to them, if you could do one thing for school safety, what would it be? I'd get all of the students and staff and school people on the same sheet of music. And what does that mean? Let me translate to you. What does that mean? Because if I say I want them all on the same sheet of music as a law enforcement, that means something different than what the schools are thinking. They think, well, we have a plan here. We have an emergency operations plan, right? We have a checklist. That's our sheet of music. That's the music that we're playing off of. Law enforcement is thinking, but do you know how to act on that? Do you know how to do this without, and I've said this again many, many times. Do you train to go to your checklist, or do you know what to do?
Yeah,
Do
that's very
you,
different.
right? So if you go back to what you said earlier, or the article that you said earlier with the SRO that got into a shooting, ask yourselves if your school staff would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So her actions, while we're going to say were remarkable and she did the right thing, good on her, her actions are things that somebody else could take earlier. Would your staff had confronted that person? And right now, with what we know, they're going to say, no, I'm not going to get into a shootout with that. I get it. But if you have somebody who's acting suspiciously, what are you going to do? If you see something that's acting out of the norm, what are you going to do? I'm not telling you to get into a shootout with somebody, but take some sort of action. Maybe you call for a secure until somebody can go out and confront that guy. I don't know all of the reasonings that she said, oh, this isn't right. I don't, like I said, but there's lots of questions that and answers that can point you in the right direction of what you should have done and would you have done. And when law enforcement says, I want them on the same sheet of music, what is that? I want them to call me when they see something like this. I want them to take some sort of action to prevent that person from getting in the school. If they're in the school, I want them to take certain actions. So they have all of these things that are laid out, but they're not talking to each other, right? And I before this recording, I talked to I think he said he was a deputy chief at a law enforcement agency in Indiana, and he had asked for a meeting to find out what we do and how we do it and so forth. But he before we even got started, he says, I have all of these affiliations with these national organizations, sat on national boards. I'm a keynote speaker for, I don't know him from anybody, but I'll take him for his word on it, right? But when he said, the first thing, he says, I have to be upfront with you. My first concern is human action, human interaction. 100% agree.
Yeah.
Technology only assists you to do whatever it is you're supposed to do better, quicker,
Right.
more accurately, with timestamps for documentation. There's lots of data that we can provide. I can't provide you the data beforehand. Things that you have to do in every scenario based upon your training and experience. There is no technology that is, at least today, there is no technology that you press a button and all of a sudden your threat is disintegrated. It's no longer there. You have to do some sort of action, up to and including, in most cases, you have to press the button, right? You have to call 911. You have to know under what circumstances you're supposed to do what. We had the B scenario, and I asked you the question, what's the protective action? What's your action? You have to know that, right? Because law enforcement is on average 3 or 4 minutes away. And in some cases, depending on how remote you are, that could be hours away.
That's crazy.
Right? So, but it is. There's small communities that are an hour or two away from somebody else, right? Small, very remote communities, not to mention like some of them, and we'll go to the extreme, in order to get a cop into your area in some remote villages in Alaska, they have to fly in.
That's wild.
Right? So
can you imagine?
Right? They have to fly in. So if there's an emergency, somebody's getting on a plane.
Wow.
So you have to take some sort of action. You have to be able to protect yourselves, your community, your schools, your students, your staffs. It takes those, it's understanding what that is. And there is no better time to invest in those human components than right now when you've spent all the money on security. So presumably you have some security in place. But if I were to guess, safety and security is, I'm going to say in the total scheme of things, is 95% human behaviors, training, experience, observation, intervention. If we're doing it right, with all of those human interactions, the human machine, the human technology, if we're doing that correctly, we're probably 95% there. And this is no better time to when you're sitting there, we have no money. We've spent a bunch of money into putting it into our security systems. We can't do that anymore. What's the other piece? And this is a piece that, just like every other system, you have to look at it every year. You have to test it every year. You have to train it every year. You have to update it every year. If we can do that, then the technology that's available will help you when you actually need it.
You're dancing around the 3 pillars.
Huh?
Weird.
Right? It is weird.
Man, we're talking about all the good stuff today, huh?
We're talking about it.
Reactionary gap, left of bang, 3 pillars. Episode was jam-packed.
The reason we're doing this is because one of my biggest pet peeves, we are 27 years past Columbine and people are still asking these questions. I need a panic button. Okay, we can but that's not what makes you safe.
It's not?
It's not, right? No. What makes you safe is...
I hear different things, Kelly, so
I know. I get it. It's all that you cannot, and I'm saying this from a technology company position. You cannot technologize yourself out of danger. Most every failure in security is human. It's human error. And if you correct that, then your technology is good and you can work through that. The technology is technology and it has a chance for failure. Humans, if you rely solely on technology, will fail very quickly. If you rely on yourselves and you practice and you're doing all the things that you need to do to make yourself, your schools, your students, your staff safe, you will succeed with or without the technology. If you're doing it correctly, you can't just say, "Oh, we don't need technology." Well, if you're going to do nothing, if you're going to still do nothing to train yourselves and prepare yourselves and take those steps to help prevent things from happening, you may as well buy technology because then you can check a box. It says, "Oh, we got this."
Yeah, I like how, you said it before. I think most technology, if not all of it, is really just taking manual processes and enabling people to do them faster. We're equipping people, we're enabling people to do all their jobs around safety quicker, better,
accurately, more efficiently,
more accurately, more efficiently. That's at the core of it. That's really what it is. And,
right.
And as we know, every second counts. So it's like,
we have competitors that say everything that you need to be safe is in this button. You need to press this button. That is false. That is absolute. It's so easy for us to train this panic button.
Well, because it's a limited narrative to fit a limited product.
That's right. But it's working because we have people who want simple.
Mm-hmm.
We want, I can't do that. Yeah. Okay. But the whole button.
There's that human part.
Right. The whole button is designed to be used after something is happening. you're forgetting everything else. All
You're
of the
forgetting all the
human
stuff that happened
stuff.
before, and you're forgetting
Right.
about all the stuff you have to do after that.
That's right.
You're banking on this one very minute part of time.
This 30 seconds of
Yeah.
even at the quickest time is a 3-minute thing, and more than it started probably years prior to, and it's going to end up. I mean, we're still talking to people who have been involved in incidences who are still trying to recover. Right.
Mm.
So your recovery, that you think it ends the week after or a couple days after an incident, and regardless of the incident of an incident. But people talk about it. People are traumatized about it. People struggle with things for many years to come. And you're sitting there saying, "But we have a panic button. We're good. We have a panic button." If that in and of itself says you're eliminating the human aspect of safety, if you're saying and you're buying into this narrative that all you need is a panic button, you're forgetting everything else. If you're relying on that, and you're forgetting all of that prevention, all of the preparation, and people are capitalizing on it, and you're going to let them. I know it. I don't know.
But Kelly, that's what the mandate says, and if I'm following a mandate, that means I'm doing everything correctly. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, we've talked about mandates, right? Mandates solve a single problem. They don't solve the problem. They solve a problem. And even the good mandates, there's many bad mandates out there, but even the good ones fall short.
Yeah. Yeah, I was referring to one that the intention is good. Like
The intention
it's
is good,
definitely
but
definitely went in the right direction.
right,
But it can't I feel like it can't stop there. Like there's so much more to it that like
right.
we gotta
But
work on.
that's why you have to look at what is the intent of the mandate, right?
It's just
So
getting an alert to
law enforcement,
yeah.
is that the intent? No, the intent is if you have something happening, emphasize that because we're still waiting for something to happen, that you're going to get the right help at the right time or as quickly as possible in the right location. So that's what the law says. That's the intent. But if you take it to the next level and say, what is the real intent here? The real intent is you get the right people who can make informed decisions quickly and who can solve your problem quickly, right? That's the real intent. It's not just to get law enforcement there, right? This is the difference between technology and 911.
You mean if I press a button that's a generic I need help button and I have an SRO running to me thinking that I'm being
I've solved my
attacked,
problem, right?
being attacked, but then I'm actually having an allergic reaction and I can't breathe, that's not going to solve my problem.
That's right. So, but
No way.
but it's understanding what they're coming to, right? And looking at the ability to be aware of the situation, have situational awareness before you get there. Not just, hey, we press this button because we're having an active shooter, because that's what most panic buttons do is you have an active shooter at this location, at this school, in close to room 202 or whatever, right? That's what they're getting. But if you start looking at the ability to communicate and show the map precisely where it is, how do I get there? What's the best access? What's available to me in resources? What cameras are available? What message groups what information do I get as I'm responding? And we say this all the time. We want police to have the same technology that the schools have: maps, locations, access, all of that stuff, right? But when you talk to law enforcement, those first officers on scene, they don't have time to look at technology. They don't have time to say, "Oh, I'm looking at this map, got to turn it this way, and I'm going to go up through this
Where am I
door."
oriented?
Right? They're not going to do that. They're going to get an idea. But if you, by what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and all of that stuff, somebody's going to say, "Well, Kelly, you just contradicted yourself." No, because the officers can't do that, but a supervisor can. A dispatcher can say, as soon as you enter the front office, hang a right. You're going to go down that hallway to the second set of stairs, up and around. They can see and hear and decipher what's going on. And at some point, you're going to get an incident commander in there, somebody who's going to say, I'm the incident commander. And now they're going to start directing everything else. Where are my casualties? Who needs help? Where are my casualty collection points going to be? Where's the triage? Where's the staging area? Because many law enforcement, many fire guys, they're all going to come in. Now we're going to start managing it. Now we're worried about the entire incident, not just that 30 seconds of that button being pushed. And then saying, figure it all out on your own. You don't get anything. That's not what we're trying to do here. So we'll leave it at that. I think people get the idea if they've made it this long. It is important to work together. One, understand the roles and opportunity or the responsibilities that each have. Understand how you're going to communicate with each other. You need to work together on the drills. You need to plan together, saying, hey, we're going to come in this way unless there's other indications. And this is what you can expect from us. And this is what we expect from you. And these are all those human elements that are required to be successful. Trust, relationships, understanding each other's roles, understanding each other's actions, and who's responsible for what. And you cannot do that if you're not working together.
I've never seen or heard of something going wrong because a school was working with their law enforcement. Like that being the cause of something going wrong.
Yeah, well, some people would argue with you on that.
Well, that's okay.
I know. I'm just saying.
I've never heard of it or seen it, so
yeah.
Feel free to send me anything that is contradictory to that, but I have seen the reverse with the reverse. You know, I have seen things go wrong because
I will tell
they were not working together.
I will tell you that if you're not working together, if something goes wrong, there's a whole lot of finger pointing. If you are working together, you're going to sit down and say, what went wrong? And let's fix it. And you're less likely to have something go wrong.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.